1955. In an America still divided by skin color, where Jim Crow laws reigned in the South, relationships between black and white people were not only forbidden, they were considered a crime. Leonardo Bryant, a black man born into poverty in a southern town, grew up with a constant fear. Fear of looks, of words, of simply being present in the wrong place. Leonardo worked alongside his uncles in an auto repair garage from a young age. There, he learned the language of machines, patience, and silence. He was tall, with ebony-toned skin and calm, piercing eyes, a presence that made white men uneasy and white women curious. But Leonardo never dared cross that dangerous line until he met Kate. Kate Whitmore was the daughter of a powerful and wealthy white family. Her father, Charles Whitmore, was a man of reputation and influence throughout the region, a believer in racial purity and the supremacy of his skin color. But Kate never felt she belonged in the world that had been drawn for her. The balls, the dresses, the teachings of submission, all of it felt like velvet shackles. She craved freedom. She craved authenticity. They met for the first time at a forbidden party, where young people, regardless of skin color, came together to enjoy jazz, whiskey, and rebellion. In the hazy light, cigarette smoke curling between defiant stares at society, Leonardo saw her, and she saw him. Kate's eyes held no fear but curiosity and boldness. They talked for hours. Leonardo, though cautious, couldn't take his eyes off the white girl who dared to cross the line, and Kate was captivated by the calm intellect and deep voice of a man society had taught her to look down upon. But that night, they didn't listen to society. They listened to their hearts. From that moment, a chain of tragedy and hope began. A love not allowed to blossom, a flight from prejudice, and a secret Kate would carry for the rest of her life. The secret of a child Leonardo never knew he had. The love between Leonardo and Kate could not exist in the light. They met quietly, in the late hours of the night, in the shadows of alleyways, amidst the hum of engines and silent music. For Leonardo, every time Kate came to him, his heart clenched, not from love, but from the constant fear that something terrible would happen. And then, it did. One evening, when Kate appeared at the garage where Leonardo worked, her figure stood out under the street lamp. Leonardo instantly felt the air thicken. His heart pounded as a black car crept up to the curb. The door opened, and out stepped Charles Whitmore, Kate's father. The world seemed to stop. Charles saw his daughter standing beside a black man. Recognition swept across his face like a blade, sharp and furious. He didn't shout. He didn't strike. His gaze alone was enough to freeze every cell in Kate's body. He seized her hand and dragged her away without a word. Leonardo stood motionless, not daring to move, because he knew if he did, it wouldn't just be Kate who paid the price. It could be his life. The next morning, slipped under the garage door, Leonardo found a note. Neat, cold. Stay away from my daughter. It wasn't a warning. It was a command. A verdict delivered by a power Leonardo had no right to defy. But Charles didn't expect that Leonardo wouldn't back down. Not out of recklessness, but because something was more substantial than fear. Love. However, Kate was living in hell in a white mansion a few miles away. She was locked in her own home like a prisoner. Phone calls monitored. Every exit is sealed. She was no longer called a daughter, but a disgrace. Her silent mother looked at her with pity and fear, but never stepped forward to protect her. Kate stopped screaming. She began planning. A slip of paper was hidden in the mailman's pocket. A message passed through a servant who once loved a black man. A meeting point beneath the night's shadow, and a declaration that changed everything. I've made my choice, Leonardo. I choose you. They would leave it all behind. The names, the wealth, the safety. In exchange, only one thing. each other. That night, the air was heavy as lead. Wind swept through the empty streets of the southern town, carrying with it the eerie stillness of an approaching storm. Leonardo stood alone under the dim light of the abandoned train station at the town's edge. No luggage, no one beside him. Just a torn suitcase filled with a few old clothes and a heart pounding violently in his chest. He didn't know if Kate would come. He knew Charles Whitmore was a man who didn't let go. He also knew that Kate might be imprisoned forever if she was caught. But still, he stood there, waiting, because if she came, he had to protect her. And then, through the mist, she appeared. Kate ran toward him, her long dress sweeping the ground, clutching a small fabric bag. In it, only one change of clothes, a few coins, and an old photo of her mother. She had brought nothing from her $1 million mansion, except her fear and love. They didn't speak. They just looked at each other. Then Leonardo held out his hand. "Are you sure?" His voice deep but steady. Kate swallowed her tears and nodded. "If not now, I'll lose you forever." They climbed into a freight car, an old worn train carrying goods northbound to an industrial town. There were no velvet galas there, no castles or titles. But at least there were no laws forbidding a black man from holding the hand of a white woman. The train car was cold and full of rust and dust. They huddled together in the dark, surrounded by crates and burlap sacks. Every clank of the iron wheels made Kate shiver, not from the cold, but from the knowledge that her father might be sending men to hunt them down behind them. Leonardo held her hand tightly, his hand rough, calloused, strong, as if shielding her from the world behind them. After more than a day of travel, they arrived in Illinois, a gray town, thick with coal smoke. No one noticed them. No one looked at Kate like a traitor. No one looked at Leonardo like a threat. Here, they were just two poor young people trying to survive, not welcomed, but not hunted. And that, to them, was heaven. They rented a small room in an old boarding house, where the walls were so thin they could hear the neighbors coughing. The bed was cramped, the blanket torn, but it was the first place in their lives where they could lie beside each other without fear. The next day, Leonardo applied for work at the steel mill. Kate got a job as a seamstress in a second-hand clothing shop. From princess to laborer, from mechanic to steel hauler. Their new life began. Hard, exhausting, but it was theirs. And between steel dust, needle and thread, and weary nights, they whispered a vow to each other. "We will survive." It was a windy Sunday afternoon in a small church on the edge of town. No bells rang, no flowers adorned the pews, and no guests filled the seats. There were only 3 people, Leonardo, Kate, and an old minister in a faded coat worn down by time. There was no wedding dress, no rings, no reception waiting afterward. But it was the moment they, one a black man fleeing the ghost of segregation, and the other a white woman who had given up every privilege, stood side by side and gave each other the only thing they had left, a vow. The minister looked at them with a mix of surprise and hesitation. He stumbled through the vows as if he were committing a crime. In the 1950s, a wedding like this was unimaginable, a direct societal challenge. When Kate said, "I do," Leonardo squeezed her hand tightly. Cold sweat trickled down his back, not from doubt, but because he knew that she was bound to him with her whole heart from that moment on, and the price they might pay could be life itself. They stepped out of the church just as a light rain fell. Kate looked up at the gray sky, feeling a strange ache rise in her chest. She was no longer Kate Whitmore. From that second on, she was Kate Bryant, wife to a man society had taught her to fear. But she felt no regret. Despite the wary eyes at the market, the whispers from miners' wives, and the children in the neighborhood staring at them like creatures from another world. Kate still smiled every evening when she returned to their tiny room, where Leonardo always kept the door open for her, with calloused hands and a gaze soft as rich soil. Their life wasn't easy. Harsh would be more accurate. Leonardo worked 12-hour shifts at the steel mill, returning home with a shirt soaked in sweat and hands blistered from red-hot iron. Kate sewed from morning till night, her fingers bloodied, the long threads like wounds never fully closed. But they lived, they laughed. And in the quiet of the night, between the sound of the sewing machine and their weary breaths, they would whisper to each other, "As long as we have each other, we are still free." But that freedom was only a thin coat of paint, and the real storm was still silently approaching. From the past, Kate once believed that time could heal all wounds. But when she held her newborn son in her arms, a baby boy with deep brown eyes like Leonardo's and skin soft as morning light, she knew that some wounds never heal. She named him Isaac. And when that tiny hand gripped her finger, Kate didn't feel pure joy, but guilt, because this wasn't the first child she had ever given birth to. 10 years earlier, when she was still Kate Whitmore, she had once been pregnant. 17 years old, the child of a mistake her father would never allow to exist. A silent mother, a dark room, lies told relatives that Kate was away for treatment, and then a child born into silence taken away before it even had a name. Kate cried, but tears couldn't save her baby. Her father had arranged everything: a contract, an adoptive family, a perfect severance. That memory Kate had buried for years. But now, holding Isaac in her arms, everything came rushing back like an old nightmare. The smell of antiseptic, the brief wail of a newborn, and her father's icy stare. She didn't tell Leonardo. She didn't dare. She was afraid that if he knew she had once abandoned a child, he would never look at her the same again. Afraid between them, two people who had chosen each other against the world, there would be a distance deeper than skin color, the distance of a buried truth. So, every time Isaac smiled, Kate also saw the shadow of another child, lost somewhere in the world. She didn't know how he was raised, or if he looked happy, or like her, or Leonardo. All she knew was that a part of her flesh and blood had been taken, and she had let it happen. She began to dream of him. No face, no name, only one question echoing in every dream, always the same. "Why did you leave me, Mother?" And every time she woke, Kate silently wept beside Leonardo, sleeping soundly, her chest tightening with a secret she swore she'd never share. But she didn't know that this secret wasn't just a scar inside her. It was a smoldering fire, waiting for the day it would burn down everything they had built. It was a June afternoon. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window, bathing Kate's hands as she busily mended one of Leonardo's old shirts. Outside, Isaac and Margaret laughed and played, their joy ringing like the golden echoes of the family she and Leonardo had worked so hard to build. And then came a knock at the door. Kate opened it. No one was there. Only a white envelope was placed neatly on the front step. No return address, no postmark, just a single line: "I know who you are." Kate froze. The words, simple yet sharp as a blade, stopped her heart momentarily. With trembling hands, she tore open the envelope. Inside, only a small slip of paper. "Your son is looking for you." The world crumbled beneath her feet. All these years, she had buried the past, convinced the baby she once gave away, the son she had never even named, would never come back. But now, someone knew. Someone was watching. And worst of all, that child was no longer just a secret. Kate immediately hid the letter deep in the bottom drawer of the wardrobe, tucked beneath scraps of fabric and an old handkerchief. She didn't tell Leonardo. She couldn't. But that night, When Leonardo gently touched her back as they slept, she recoiled. Not because she feared him, but because she feared the truth would take that embrace away. Forever. In the days that followed, Kate lived in a quiet panic. Every unfamiliar glance on the street, every strange footstep behind her, every unfamiliar sound outside the window made her heart leap. And then, she saw him again. A strange man, white, wearing a dark suit, standing silently at the end of the street, hands in his pockets, eyes cold as steel, watching her house. He didn't approach, didn't speak. He just stood there like a shadow. Kate realized that the life she thought she had escaped was slowly, silently tracking her down. She stopped sleeping. She lost weight. She no longer smiled at the children like before. She didn't answer when Leonardo asked, "Are you okay?" She wasn't okay. She had never been okay. But what terrified her more than anything else? I knew the clock was ticking. And soon, Leonardo would learn the truth. The only question was, when that moment came, would he stay? Or would he leave her, just as her father once did? Leonardo stepped into the bedroom after a long shift at the steel mill. It was raining. Droplets fell steadily from the eaves onto the window frame, tapping rhythmically, as if echoing the heavy thoughts in his mind. Kate was asleep, or at least pretending to be. Her face looked peaceful, but her furrowed brows told of a storm waging deep within. Leonardo quietly opened the vanity drawer to grab the old comb he always used. And then, he saw it. A crumpled envelope. No name, no address, just one slanted, chilling line. "I know who you are." His hand froze. His heart tightened under invisible pressure. He opened the letter and read the words inside. "Your son is looking for you." He stood there, motionless. In that moment, every suspicion, every feeling he had pushed aside, Kate's distant gaze, the way she flinched when he gently touched her back, the way she dodged questions when their children asked about her side of the family, suddenly clicked into place. She had hidden something, something enormous. Leonardo placed the letter back exactly as it was, carefully, as though he had never touched it. But what lay inside him couldn't be returned the same way. That night, he lay beside Kate, as he had every night. But for the first time in his life, he could not sleep. Not because of anger, but because of fear. Fear that the woman he loved, the woman he had sacrificed everything to protect, may have never truly trusted him. Fear that all these years, the marriage he believed was real, might have only been a form of escape, a gamble, a desperate choice. And if that were true, then what was he in her life? A husband, or merely a ticket out of a cage named Whitmore? Leonardo said nothing, asked no questions, showed no anger. He simply began to observe, silently pulled back, like a man standing at the edge of a chasm carved by doubt. And from that moment on, the wind of suspicion began to drift through their small home. Soft, but ice cold. Night fell. The rain had stopped, but the air was strangely cold. Wind slipped through the cracks in the door, making the oil lamp on the nightstand flicker as if it might go out at any moment. Leonardo sat beside the bed, his gaze never leaving Kate's face, the wife who seemed to grow weaker by the day. Kate lay there, frail, her pale skin blending into the thin blanket. The pain in her chest made her breath shallow, each gasp dragging long-buried memories to the surface. Leonardo didn't need to ask anymore. He already knew. The letter, the look in Kate's eyes these past few days, the quiet distance growing between them. Everything had spoken what she never dared to say aloud. And then, she was the one who broke the silence. Her voice trembled, barely audible. I need to tell you before it's too late." Leonardo tightened his grip on her hand. He said nothing, just waited. Kate looked at him, eyes brimming with tears. Then, word by word, secret by secret, she pulled them from the fear she had buried for over a decade. The day I ran away with you, it wasn't because I loved you. It was because I was scared. Scared of my father, of the future he forced on me. You were the only way out, the only real thing in a world full of lies. But I never told you the truth, that I had once had a child. I was only 17 when I gave birth. A baby boy. I wasn't allowed to hold him for more than 5 minutes. My father arranged everything. He hid it from me, hid it from the world. Leonardo said nothing, but his eyes darkened. I've lived with that regret every day, and I never told you, because I was afraid you'd look at me differently, afraid you'd see me as a liar, afraid you'd believe I never truly loved you. Kate choked back a sob. For the first time, her tears weren't for the pain in her body, but for the fear of losing the only person who had ever made her feel seen. But Leonardo, after everything, I did love you, truly. Not out of fear, not because of the past. I love you because you're the only person who's never left me, no matter who I was. The room sank into silence. Leonardo didn't speak, but his eyes hardened by prejudice, by labor, by years of being diminished, were now wet. He didn't scold her. He didn't pull his hand away. He just sat there quietly. And then he spoke, softly. I didn't get to choose being born a black man, just like you didn't get to choose being Charles Whitmore's daughter. But here, with you, I chose to stay. And I still choose you, even knowing the truth. Kate broke down in tears. In his arms, she knew. This wasn't forgiveness. It was love, pure, raw, and brave. Because sometimes, forgiveness doesn't need to be spoken. It only needs one thing: to still be holding hands, even when the naked truth is laid bare. The small house on the corner sat in aching silence the next morning. Kate was gone. No final gasp, no whispered goodbye. Only the chill of her still skin and her slender hand still clutching a faded piece of cloth she once stitched for Isaac when he was born. Leonardo sat beside her, motionless, as if his heart had stopped the very moment she took her last breath. The room, always small, now felt far too large. Every corner echoed with her presence. The chipped ceramic cup by the stove, the old tablecloth Kate had mended by hand. All the simple things had become blades, slicing through Leonardo's memories with every breath. He didn't cry, but his eyes were shadowed, filled with a weight no language could name. Then, he opened the drawer where Kate had hidden her old letters. The final letter. It wasn't Charles Whitmore's handwriting, not a threat, just a single handwritten line. Her son is looking for her. Leonardo's hands trembled. A cold sweat broke across his forehead. Her son? Not Isaac. Not Margaret. The child Kate once gave up. The child she hadn't held for more than 5 minutes before being taken away. He stared at the line, like it had drained the soul from his body. A storm surged inside him. Shock, hurt, grief, and something worse than anger. Emptiness. Kate, why didn't you tell me? Why? But there was no one left to answer. The letter was the final wound. Not because of the truth, that she'd had another child, but because she'd hidden it until the very end. You said I was the one you loved, but all your life, you never believed I could know the whole of you. Leonardo stepped out of the room, heart heavy as stone. He looked around the house one more time, the house they had built together, raised children in, fought poverty, racism, and ghosts of the past. But now, in that house, he felt like a stranger. One morning, while Isaac and Margaret were still asleep, Leonardo sat at the kitchen table and read the letter again. The handwriting was shaky, likely from someone too afraid to sign their name. But the message was clear. Her son is looking for her. He thought about that son, a grown young man, unaware of his origins, unaware of who his mother was, why he was left behind, but now searching for a part of himself, searching for truth. And now, the only person left who could speak that truth was Leonardo. He set the letter down, his fingertips brushing the words. No one was forcing him to respond. No one was asking him to take this journey. But then he thought, if that were Isaac, if someone had hidden my son from me all his life, would I want him to stay in the dark forever? The answer was clear. Leonardo stood, reached for his coat. The air was bitter, the wind sharp, and each step felt like entering a battle with no known ending. But one thing was certain. He would find that son. No matter how cruel the past had been, no matter how much truth made old wounds bleed again. He had to tell the boy about Kate, about love, about regret, about the mother he never got to know, but who lived on in every beat of Leonardo's aching heart. The next day, sunlight spilled through the window pane, but could not cut through the dense fog clouding Leonardo's mind. He sat alone on a bus heading toward the city center, the only place where this fragile search could possibly begin. In the pocket of his coat, the final letter still remained. Just one line, no sender, no address, no clues. Just a sentence, but enough to unravel the entire world of a man who once believed he knew everything about the woman he loved. Her son is looking for her. Leonardo sat still, eyes staring blankly out the window. Every bend in the road seemed to carve into the past that Kate had buried deep within her heart. A dark corner even their love had never touched. At the city's civil records office, Leonardo carefully laid the letter on the desk in front of an older black staff member, a man with curious but gentle eyes. The man turned the letter over, frowning. No sender's name, no case number, date, or any identifying details, the man said, then looked up. Are you sure she never said anything about the child? Leonardo nodded. Number. She was 17 when she got pregnant. Her family forced her to give birth and hand the child over immediately. Everything was kept hidden. No records, no papers. No one knew, except her parents. The man fell silent. Then our only hope is that the boy left some sort of trace when he started searching. Leonardo began to chase the faintest possibilities. He visited offices for missing family assistance. He spoke with retired social workers, nurses who had once worked at the hospital where Kate might have given birth. He left behind her former name, Kate Whitmore, Southern roots, born in 1936, gave birth around 1953, once lived in the home of her father, Charles Whitmore, a wealthy and elusive figure. Each lead led to a dead end. Every door that opened slammed shut again the moment he uttered that name. Until one day. At a center for reconnecting lost families, Leonardo waited quietly for his turn. A young woman stepped out from the back room, nodded, and invited him in. Who are you looking for? She asked gently. Leonardo handed her the letter. I don't know his name, only that he's the son of my wife. She's passed away, and I'm the only one left who can tell him the truth. The woman stared at the letter, then looked back at Leonardo. A flicker of hesitation crossed her eyes. You said your wife's name was? Kate Whitmore, or Kate Bryant after we married. The woman gently clenched her hands. There was someone, just a few weeks ago, a young man, around 30. He came looking for his birth mother. He didn't have a birth certificate, no name, just a small scrap of paper hidden in the blanket he was wrapped in as a baby. It had one line, Forgive me, K.W. Leonardo felt his whole body freeze. K.W., Kate Whitmore. The woman nodded. He left his contact information, hoping that, if the mother was still alive, or if someone who knew her came forward, they'd reach out. Leonardo took the slip of paper she handed him, his eyes trembling as he read the name for the first time. Nathaniel. That night, Leonardo couldn't sleep. He sat in front of Kate's photo, his eyes locked on the faded picture, a distant smile from a woman who had loved, who had sacrificed, who had hidden too much pain. Kate, I'll do what you didn't get the chance to do. I won't let you leave this world carrying that guilt. I will find our son, and I will tell him about you. It was a late autumn afternoon, the sky gray and heavy with low-hanging clouds. Leonardo stood in front of a small suburban house where the name, Nathaniel Carter, was printed on the mailbox. His hand trembled slightly as he raised it to knock, not from fear, but because a long journey was reaching its end, carrying with it pain, love, and truths that had never been spoken aloud. Footsteps echoed from within. The door opened. In front of Leonardo stood a young man, just over 30, tall, fair-skinned, neatly cut black hair, and eyes deep and brown, eyes that looked exactly like Kate's. Leonardo froze. This wasn't just a stranger. This was her son, the child Kate had carried in her heart for a lifetime. Nathaniel narrowed his eyes at the unfamiliar man standing at his door. "Are you Nathaniel Carter?" Leonardo asked, softly, doing his best to remain calm. "Yes." "And you are?" Leonardo took out an old photograph, Kate in her youth, wearing a simple floral dress, standing beside him beneath the awning of their little home in Illinois. Nathaniel looked at the photo, his eyes widening, lips parting, a silent reaction, but filled with deep shock. "That's my mother," Nathaniel whispered. Leonardo nodded. "And I was her husband, the man she ran away with, the man she built a life with. We had 2 more children together." The air grew thick. A long silence followed, as if the entire world was holding its breath. "Did she ever mention me?" Nathaniel asked, his voice hoarse. Leonardo lowered his head. "She kept that secret her whole life. It wasn't until her final moments that she told me about you." Nathaniel turned away, fists clenched. "I searched everywhere for her, for 10 years. Just one line, one explanation." "She never forgot you," Leonardo said quickly, his voice breaking. "Not a single day. When our son, Isaac, was born, she cried through the night. Not from joy, but from guilt. For you." Nathaniel stood still. Leonardo reached out and placed a letter in his hands, Kate's handwriting, trembling yet full of love. "Nathaniel, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I wasn't a good mother, but I loved you from the first moment I saw you, even if only for a few seconds. If you're reading this, I may no longer be here, but know this. You have always been a part of my heart, a part that never fully healed." The words blurred as Nathaniel's tears began to fall. A minute passed, then 2, and finally, he stepped forward and embraced Leonardo, the man who had been hidden from his life, yet was now the only bridge to the mother he never knew. A few weeks later, Leonardo invited Nathaniel to his home. Isaac and Margaret, his and Kate's children, greeted him with surprise and cautious curiosity. But once they learned he was their biological brother, flesh and blood, their eyes changed. There was no suspicion, only a strange connection, as though their mother's spirit was smiling somewhere nearby. In that small house, for the first time in years, the family, though patchworked and overdue, felt whole. That evening, when everyone had gone to bed, Leonardo stood alone on the porch. He looked up at the star-filled night sky, where he believed Kate was listening. "You see this, Kate?" he whispered. "I did what you couldn't. I brought him home." He smiled gently. No more pain, no more resentment, only peace. Because sometimes, love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing, no matter how late, to forgive, to heal, and to keep moving forward. If you were moved by this story, leave a comment and share the video to spread the message. True love doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with the courage to face the past and forgive each other.